Hi, everyone. Welcome to Potzer Analytics. I'm Sebastian. Today, we're going to be talking about poisoned pawns. So, how to identify a situation where a free piece isn't actually free, and how you can use that to help you set traps for your opponent to fall into. We're going to talk about three of the most common situations in which poisoned pawns occur. The first scenario we're going to look at is called the bishop trap. So this scenario is characterized by one player having three pawns all together, and then the last one, the one closest to the side of the board, is undefended. And this one here on a2 is going to be our poison pawn. So let's see what happens when black takes that free pawn. So white is going to push the second pawn to b3, blocking off the escape route for the bishop. So white plays b3. Now, black cannot play the bishop to b1 because it'll get taken by the king. And if he takes the pawn on b3, the pawn here on c2 is defending it. So black chooses to play queen over to e7, thinking next move they'll play queen to a3 and protect their bishop. But it's a little too late because white is able to walk their king over and gobble up the black bishop. So white plays king to b2. So black plays bishop takes b3. White captures back with their pawn. White was able to get a bishop for 2 pawns. So back at the beginning here, this pawn here on a2 is our poison pawn, and it only works because white has all 3 pawns connected. And when black takes that pawn, white is able to trap it and then bring over another piece in order to pick up the bishop. So this trap is super common. It happens all the time. And we're just going to play another position where I want you to try to visualize the sequence of steps without moving any pieces. So here it's the same idea where white has 3 pawns. They're all connected. And the last one is our poison pawn, which is under attack by the black bishop. So try to picture in your head, what are the sequence of steps in which white is going to trap that bishop? So if black captures the poison pawn, white is going to push their second pawn to trap the bishop, stop it from retreating. Then they're going to bring in another piece, in this case the rook, to come over and then pick up that bishop. So let's see that play out. So black takes the pawn on a2. Then white traps the bishop, stopping it from retreating. Black is going to try to bring in some other pieces to try to help, but it's too late because now the rook is going to slide over and pick up that bishop. Now black chooses to just get a second pawn, and white takes back. So white got a bishop for 2 pawns. So let's look at a slightly different position here. This position is very similar to the last one, except black has their pawn on a5. Before it was on a7. So this position is just meant to show you that things aren't always as they appear. And sometimes you can play a trick, or you can be really creative on how you can break your bishop free and set it free from the trap. So we're going to look at what happens when black takes that pawn on a2. So black takes a2. Again, white is going to try to trap the bishop. But now, black is going to play their pawn to a4. And now they're going to use their pawn to break up the pawn chain and free the bishop. So if white takes the pawn here, of course, black is free to just bring that bishop back. And it's essentially a trade. So each side got a pawn. But if white tries to bring over their rook and try to pick up that bishop, black is going to capture that pawn on b3. So let's see that. White plays their rook to a1, and now a takes b3. So now the capture here does 2 things. It breaks up that pawn chain, but at the same time, it's protecting that bishop, so the rook cannot take it. So white takes back with their pawn, and then the bishop takes the pawn. So this is a super common way to break your bishop out of the trap, is to bring in a pawn and break up that pawn chain. Because when the pawn captures, it's going to protect the bishop at the same time. The next type of poisoned pawn scenario we're going to look at is a discovered attack with check. And I first came across this when I was playing in a tournament, and at the time I was playing the French defense, and this is a super common trap in the French defense. I'd never seen it before, but my opponent played their bishop to d3. And so then I thought, hey, that's a free pawn on d4 because I have 2 powers attacking it and my opponent only has 1 power attacking it. So that means I can pick it up for free. So I happily captured the pawn with my knight. They captured back with their knight, and then I captured with my queen, and that's when my opponent set their trap on me, played their bishop, check, opening up a discovered attack on my queen, and was able to pick up my queen. So white played bishop check. Black is forced to deal with the check. So black played their king to d8. And then white just picked up my queen with their queen. So all the way back at the beginning, this is a super common trap in the French defense where bishop here on d3, it sets a discovered attack here. And so now this pawn here on d4 becomes a poisoned pawn. Here's another position where black has a poisoned pawn on d5, which is currently under attack by the white rook. So try to picture in your head what would happen if white takes that pawn with their rook. So if white takes the pawn with their rook, black is going to take the pawn on h2, check, which opens up a discovered attack on the rook, and then they're going to pick up that rook. So let's see that play out. White plays rook takes d5. Black is going to take the pawn with check and open up a discovered attack with their rook. So black plays check. Knight takes that bishop, and then black picks up the white rook. So all the way here at the beginning, you should be able to see that this pawn here on d5, which looks undefended, is actually a poisoned pawn because it's defended by a discovered attack. So again, this happens all the time. It's super common. Here's another position. See if you can find a good move for white. So white is eyeing up this knight here on c4. White would like to take it with their rook, but it's defended by the black queen. But white actually has a tactic where they can play check with their knight, opening up a discovered attack with their queen. So let's see that play out. White takes the knight with their rook. Black captures with their queen. Now white can play knight check and then pick up the queen with their queen. So white plays check, black captures back, and then white picks up the black queen. So back at the beginning of this here is a poisoned piece, in this case a poisoned rook, for black. Black should not take this rook with their queen because then they're going to lose their queen. The last type of poisoned pawn scenario we're going to look at is actually its namesake. So there's a line called the Sicilian-Najdorf poisoned pawn variation in which the poisoned pawn is incorporated into the opening. And this is just one line we're going to look at. It's a very sharp opening, but we're just going to look at the variation where white chooses to play a3, setting a trap for black. So white plays their pawn to a3, and now this pawn here on b2 is a poisoned pawn. If black chooses to take the pawn on b2, it's actually going to get trapped and black will lose their queen. And this move here on b3 is crucial. As we're going to see, it's crucial to protecting one of the squares that black could retreat to. So let's see what happens when black takes the pawn. White is going to move their knight out to a4, attacking the black queen, and black realizes each one of the retreat squares is being covered by a different one of white's pieces. So this pawn here on a3 is actually super critical in order to protect the square on b4, stopping the black queen from getting out. And so here black chooses just to take a high value piece, the rook, because they realize they can't get it out anywhere. So black takes the rook on a1, and then white captures back with their queen, and white is up a queen. So all the way back here, white sets the trap on black by playing a3. this is now a poison pawn on b2. So let's see that trap again, because it happens all the time. Here's another position, very similar to the last one, where white is going to play their pawn to a3. So white is setting a trap for black by making b2 a poison pawn. Try to picture in your head what would happen if black takes that pawn with their queen. What would white do in order to trap the queen? So if black takes the pawn with their queen, white is going to play their knight out to a4, and each square that the black queen could retreat to is being covered by a different piece. And remember, this only works because of the a3 pawn. And now, if black doesn't move the queen, it's just going to lose it. So black chooses just to take the rook here, and then queen takes back. So all the way back here, white sets a trap for black by playing a3. And now black cannot take this pawn, otherwise they're going to lose their queen. Here's a very similar position as the last one, except now the black bishop is on f5 instead of g4. So this is just to show you that things aren't always as they appear. You really need to think through each square that the black queen could run to and see whether or not it's actually trapped. So here white is going to try to trap the black queen by playing a3, but we're going to see that it actually doesn't work because this pawn here on c2 is being attacked by the black bishop. So now when black takes that pawn on b2, they'll be able to run over to c2 in order to free their queen. So we'll play it out. Queen takes b2. White thinks they're able to trap the queen, so white plays knight a4, but now the queen can capture here on c2 because it's protected by the bishop. Queen takes, and now queen takes back, and bishop takes. So this is just meant to show you that you need to think through each square the queen could possibly run to if you're trying to trap it. This is the last position we're going to look at, and it involves a poisoned pawn on b2 that's currently being attacked by the black bishop. And this position is just meant to show you that sometimes you can use a poisoned pawn to get activity. So not just material, but you can use it to gain activity. And we're going to look at what happens when black captures this pawn on b2. So black takes b2. Now white moves their rook over to b1, skewering the bishop and the pawn. And the end result is that white is going to get their rook onto the 7th rank. So black run back with their bishop, white takes the pawn and ends up with their rook on the 7th rank, which is a very powerful rank for the rook. So white has traded pawns in order to get their rook on this very powerful rank. And so here, black is going to protect their pawn, which is currently under attack. And now white brings down their second rook. So now they have 2 rooks on the 7th rank, and black defends this pawn here on f7. And now white is in complete control of this position. 2 highly active rooks, black is in defense mode. So all the way back here, black should not take this pawn on b2, this poison pawn, because it's going to result in white having extremely high activity. So that's it for today's video on poison pawns and setting traps. We talked about the bishop trap, the discovered attack with check, and the queen trap. I hope you guys use this and go trap all of your friends. Like and subscribe to our channel to get free access to all of our lessons on Lichess. And that's it. So I'll see you guys in our next video. Bye.